We had a little mishap last time. We invited George to our studio, but he's here now, ladies and gentlemen. The book, did you ever finish the book, George?
You know, it's always the same thing right at the end of the sort of the submission process. It's just a matter of trying to get it over the line.
Book on Zeno's Paradox, ladies and gentlemen. It was nearly finished. What have you got for us today, George?
My wonderful new invention, which is the remote-controlled hostess trolley.
The name, just a description of it. I thought it'd have a catchier name, to be honest.
Well, I haven't thought of one yet. I mean, maybe, you know, if somebody wants to phone in with suggestions.
It's obviously not your forte, George, but that's a terrible name. There's about 8 or 9 syllables there. Can we pare that down, listeners? We don't know much about it, George. What does it do? What is it?
I think everybody would agree that the hostess trolley was a fantastic invention. Kept your food hot all the way into the dining room, so you can be eating course after course of delicious food and nothing's getting cold.
But it's keeping the food hot. How's it doing that?
Well, it's plugged into the mains, isn't it?
Oh, it's electric. Okay.
Yeah, electric hostess trolley.
So
you know, it's a sort of a hot plate but it's on wheels so that you get your food off the cooker or out of the oven, whichever. Plate it up into serving dishes on the hostess trolley. Wheel the hostess trolley up to beside your table. Keeps it nice and warm for you whilst you're eating, chatting with friends, whatever it is.
Again, not happy with the name, George.
That's what they were called back whenever they were invented.
I didn't invent hostess. George, they're called. I can't remember because they told me not to say hostess or mayoress or authoress. The hostess these days, I think, is a public. I can't remember, but you're not allowed to say that anymore.
What, hostess trolley?
That's right. That's what they told me.
Who told you?
Well, you know, the people. And you didn't know about that. I was 6 weeks off air, George.
No, I didn't know that, no.
Apparently, I used language which was all right when I started doing radio, but now is virulently racist and homophobic, I found out to my cost.
What? What on earth?
It wasn't funny to me, George. 6 weeks for one. I'm not going to repeat it. I called somebody a little 6 weeks, George. But I have been re-educated. I now know not to say words like hostess. Please, don't threaten my job.
Just for the sake of clarity, is the word trolley okay?
Yes, you could use that.
Okay, well, if the ladies and gentlemen can imagine a trolley.
Pardon, if the what?
Sorry?
What did you just say?
If the ladies and gentlemen...
Sorry, George. I'm going to have to ask you to step back from that kind of language. Could you just say listeners?
Is the word "and" acceptable to you?
Say listeners and listeners, and they can sort themselves out into their own little groups.
So... All right, let me just get this straight. So, I'm sure that the listeners and listeners can remember a trolley.
Wait. Sorry, just only 2 groups of listeners there, Mr. Jessup.
Okay, all right. Let me try again. If the listeners and listeners and those who identify in a non-listening way.
Oh, you think it's funny, don't you, George?
Okay, listen, I
thought you, George, to be honest, I thought coming from Islington and wearing the clothes that you do, because look at you, I would have thought you'd be completely on board with this, but here you are, hostess, ladies and gentlemen.
So listeners, and of course, not forgetting non-listeners.
That's good, you see, we are progressing.
I'm sure that they will be able to remember, although of course this will mean nothing to non-listeners because
don't get
definition they're not listening.
George, don't get clever. I tried that on the course and they don't like it. And that was one of my takeaway messages. Don't get funny, don't get clever.
Okay.
George, tell us about your trolley.
the late 1960s. Those good people, is people okay? Can
Yes.
I say people? Those good
Can't
people.
say humanity, but you can say people. Off
Those
you
good,
go.
those good people at Morphy Ritter's invented a trolley, which at the time was preceded by another word beginning with H, which I must say.
Exactly.
The purpose of which was to keep food warm at the dinner table.
And that was the good old days, George, wasn't it? That was a beautiful, family setting, the warm food, 2 channels to choose from. No arguments over the remote. There wasn't a remote.
Well, I detected a flaw in this arrangement.
What could shatter such a perfect vision of domestic harmony?
Well, there's an assumption implicit in this arrangement.
Oh, this is where your university training's coming in now.
That your dining table
Yes.
is adjacent to a PowerPoint.
Yes, you're like a knife through butter. Yeah.
And if it isn't, I attached a diesel
I'm just going
engine.
to cut you off there. We've got to play. You know what it's like. Daryl Hall and John Oates. I can't go for that. Brackets. No can do. Close bracket. Oh, and those sounds do take me back to the days of the trolleys that used to come into the room. Do you remember them? That's what we're talking about.
Yes,
the trolley. And we made an improvement of it with George Jessup piece and inventor.
Yes. And my first thought, stick a diesel engine on it, keep the food warm. I was no longer tied to proximity to a PowerPoint.
I'm just thinking this over, George. You know those model aeroplanes you get? Or the racing cars, the model racing cars?
Yeah.
Could you not have done that?
What?
Well, attached it to a model, a high enough powered model racing car. Maybe put 4 of them together. And you could actually direct and guide it. It's the smell, George. I'm thinking of the smell. It's diesel, George.
My second innovation was to provide masks for my co-diners. That worked quite nicely until I forgot, of course, that there's a step up into my dining room from my kitchen, which the hostess trolley was unable to traverse.
Because that's what did for the Daleks in the end.
Yes, and I feared that it was going to do that for my trolley.
But how does it get up the step?
Hydraulic struts.
Like, in the wacky races, there was one and the long legs came out, that sort of thing.
That sort of thing. Yeah, or War of the Worlds.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, yes, that as well.
Yeah.
I've run out of those examples now, George. The only 2 extendable leg examples I've got to hand. But that's enough to get a grasp, isn't it?
I think that's plenty. Well, eventually I got around to thinking that, well, given that I live in a reasonably small flat, it occurred to me that there was a completely different application. The word is takeaway. You've got to put your coat on, you've got to get into the car, or in my case, get onto your bicycle, go down to the Indian takeaway, order your pakoras, your naan breads, your barges,
dal. Don't forget the dal.
Dal. Then you got the whole business in reverse.
Maybe some aloo gobi.
Yeah. So I thought,
telescope tripod. That's also got extendable legs. That's 3 things. Sorry, go on.
It occurred to me that I could repurpose this remote technology. And I thought, what if I could, using remote control, I could send my trolley off down to the Indian restaurant to go and collect the food and then bring it back for me.
Like an episode of The Jetsons. It's an unimaginable future. Bobby Brown now, Every Little Step. Official video. No, I'm not supposed to read that. But Every Little Step by Bobby Brown. We're back with George Jessup. Brown, ladies and gentlemen. I've still got George Jessup here. It's much better having him in the studio than fretting.
I have a question.
Oh, George, yes, you're asking questions.
Are you allowed to say Brown?
Oh, George.
I was quite surprised that you were allowed to say Indian.
No, George, no. I wonder, listeners, do you know the answer to that?
Listeners and non-listeners.
Listeners and listeners. Are we infringing the rule? That's a very good question, George. Is Bobby's last name now not kosher? I don't mean kosher, I mean taboo. No, forbidden, verboten. Oh, blimey. You can't say his last name. And there's another grey area. Well, light black hair between black, well, a grey, it's difficult, isn't it, George? It's difficult. Modern times.
For me,
I don't know, George. I've done the course and I still don't know. Maybe we shouldn't have. Let's show some contrition. But most importantly, let's find out. We've got the trolley. It's up and working. You're manoeuvring it down to the takeaway. Lovely, delicious Indian that we've just imagined, and it smells lovely. And you've got it back here, and what could possibly go wrong? You're at the final stages. You said, I've got my product, in I go, patent, bang, millionaire.
Well, this was in 1987.
Okay. I'm picturing 1987 now, George. Right, yes. I'm there.
Yes.
Where are we?
We're on the Essex Road in Islington.
You've not moved house in all that time?
No.
It's a nice house.
Well, it's a small flat.
It's a lot of traffic noise.
Quite a lot, yes. But anyway, the whole camera remote control thing worked like a dream.
In 1987, you're sitting in your chair. This must have been quite a sight for people.
Well, I mean, it was, and I especially on the way back. The first problem was that it moves at walking pace, which means that given that the takeaway is about a mile away,
yes,
meant that it took approximately 20 minutes to get.
I'd say 20 minutes.
20 minutes to get down there. Just all a bit slow, and then I had to wait another 20 minutes whilst they got the food ready, and I did have to explain it. I think probably 2 or 3 times before they fully understood that the trolley was going to be arriving, and that they should put my order onto that, and then they
because of a bad line.
I think probably because it was just rather an unusual idea.
George, it's better that it was a bad line. Otherwise, people might think you had some difficulty understanding their English, and they're not from here.
Well, I prefer to think that it was just a rather unusual concept that possibly was a little ahead of its time. And
that it may have been, George. I have learned that what I personally prefer to think is often illegal.
Let's leave that aside for one moment.
Yes.
My trolley moving at pace. See if you can guess what happened next.
Dull frizzy. If I'd seen one of them, frankly, George, going past at walking pace, and it was not electrified, I would help myself.
Yes, well, it seems that you're not alone.
Did you modify it then?
Well, I did.
So what year are we in now? What year's test run to?
1991, I finally managed to electrify the electric.
So 4 years later, you've already been working on it for years. So we're talking about 6 years of your life now. And it's trundling towards the takeaway. They've already been warned. Extra poppadoms. Anyway, now what's the problem this time? Electrified, what could go wrong?
I was obliged under health and safety legislation to put up lots of signs saying that
they're a bugger, aren't they? They really are a bugger.
That my trolley was electrified, so I had to have a big sign on the front saying this trolley electrified, do touch at own risk. That played havoc with the aerodynamic qualities of the trolley and pretty much halved its maximum speed. So
did you get the Indian home? Did you enjoy it?
No, sadly, I didn't get to eat the Indian food that time either, because somebody who for whom English was not a first language didn't read the signs and picked up the food, and they were electrocuted and they had to go to hospital.
Welsh fellow, was it?
I don't know. I don't know what it. I didn't learn much about him. The desk sergeant had never. I think he was quite keen to charge me, but he didn't know with what.
There's nothing to charge you with, George. You're an entrepreneur, you're a pioneer, you're a one-off.
Well, I did explain what I was doing, and I thought
You were the Elon Musk of '90s Islington.
I thought they were quietly quite impressed with what I was doing.
Probably quietly thinking, I wish I had one of them. That's not at all a bad idea, said PC Robinson to his mate. We'll go lightly on this one. We'll not charge him. It would be like charging Galileo with a minor misdemeanor in his youth and locking him up forever.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. By now, it's really quite an elaborate piece of machinery. I mean, from an engineering point of view, I am very, very proud of it. I
think 6 years in. Can I ask you how much it's cost up to now in materials? Suppose I'm going to put this on the market, including the diesel engine, retractable lid, and all that. The electrification. It's sounding quite pricey now, to be honest.
Well, I mean, we think that we can bring it to market for about £45,000.
You see, that sounds a lot to me. I don't know if this is a north-south divide here, but for a trolley that'll just get to a fish and chip shop and bring your chips back, you might as well get married. I didn't say that. I meant it would be why would you go to the chip shop and get all the fish and chip for your lady wife or your husband if with this thing? Do you know where I'm coming from?
Not really, no.
I'll rephrase it. But you don't even need to send a trolley out. You just have a guy, let's say, or a girl or a trans with a motorbike ready to send out, and you could phone through your order. Stop me if you've heard this one.
Well, but that would be great.
Yeah, but then and it's 1991, and you're telling me this didn't happen?
No, it's absurd. That'll never happen.
Is that what people said in 91?
Well, that's what I'm saying now.
No, it does happen. I'm telling you.
No, don't be daft.
No, it does. I did it the other day. You pick up your phone.
Yeah.
There's loads of things. They're called apps. And you scroll. This is called scrolling. And you find one. You move them down till you find me. Oh, I'll have that. Yeah. Look at that. What do you want tonight, love? What do you want tonight, partner? And she or he will say, fish and chips, please. No, something vegan. They go, vegan food, please. So you'll all order your vegan food, and a person of indeterminate sex, who cares? We don't. Will deliver it, and it'll be piping on because they put it in these big boxes and they come on bikes. Have you never seen them? You know them people that ride around with big bikes with big boxes on. You must have thought, what's in them boxes? I'll tell you, pizzas.
Get out of here.
No, that's what they do these days, the young people. Well, and me, they taught me that.
And there's no charge.
Well, you know how it works. They don't tell you if it's on the bill or not. I suppose there's a search. Well, what would you charge? £45,000, yours. How many pizzas would I have to get back and forth? I could go in a taxi, frankly. Sorry, have I left you a bit? I don't want to pour water on this excellent product, listeners and listeners and listeners and listeners. But I just can't see a future for it. I didn't mean to deflate you.
No, it's perfectly okay.
Did you not know about these? There's one called Just Eat, and what I shouldn't really say. There's one called Uber Eats. You know them? Do you know them people where you can, instead of a taxi, you can phone them up and they just come to your door? No, you don't, do you?
No.
George, you do have a computer, do you? What do you do? Just online courses about sociology?
Well, I know a lot of people sneer at sociology, but it's, arguably it is the dominant social science of the 20th century, the bedrock of our understanding about crime, about education, about suicide, about religion.
And you've never heard of Uber Eats? But I mean, as a sociologist, George, I would have thought you'd have been more in touch with, you know, trends among the young people. Do you know what a Reddit is?
A what?
A Reddit. A subreddit.
Is that Indian food? I don't know.
4chan. Do you know 8chan?
No.
Anonymous. Lulz Sec. You must know these people.
No.
Dark web. Intellectual dark. None of them. You've never been down the rabbit hole. Black pilled, they call it.
No.
Oh, I spend a lot of time on the internet, me. I don't listen to any of those that I've just said, though. I used to, but I don't anymore.
You know, I mean, I think it would be useful for organising deliveries of. It doesn't have to be food, does it?
It could be a new puppy on a child's birthday.
Yeah, but then the hot plate's a problem, isn't it?
Well, you don't have to be on, does it? Can you not turn it off?
Well, no, well, I'd have to completely rewire it.
What if I'm having cheese?
What? Oh, yeah.
Well, what if I'm having basically any food that isn't served hot? Couldn't have salad, couldn't have cheese and biscuits, couldn't have anything in a plastic cup. It would just...
No, I hadn't...
Anyway, I'm sorry about that, George. I've left you sort of high and dry there. You've got more development to do to undercut these fiends who invented takeaway services.
Yeah.